All right. And here we are. Mr. Jason Duncan, we are here. We are live. I'm so excited for you to be here with us this afternoon. Happy Father's Day, by the way. So let's get right into it. So the podcast, There Is No Try, that is us. We talk about really everything, specifically business, entrepreneurship, spirituality, mindset. But more specifically, we talk about when things aren't going very well, right? When things are at their toughest, the days are the darkest, and what one or two small, seemingly insignificant decisions does one make in order to climb back out of that dip, out of that hole. And that's really critical. One of the truthisms that I always try to coax out on these conversations. So without further ado, Jason, thank you for being on the show. We got a lot to get into. I think you're back on mute for some reason.
How about now? How about
there
that?
We go. There we go. We're here.
Man, you'd think after 90 days of doing Zoom meetings through COVID, we'd all be really experts in this by now, but not the case today.
To believe
but
me,
it's
I
an honor
have
to
this
be here. Thank you. Well, thank you, Pierre, for inviting me. I appreciate you inviting me on this. I'm honored and hope that I can provide value for your listeners and whoever's watching out there.
I appreciate that. So Jason, you have a very different story than many of the folks that we have on here. So let's start at the beginning of your story, and then we'll get on to you being a rock star entrepreneur and winning all these awards and all that cool stuff. That success is fantastic. But what I found over the years is that while people are attracted to the success, they connect with that struggle. And so we're going to get into that a little bit. But let's start at the top. Where are you from? And kind of how did you get your start becoming a school teacher, et cetera?
So I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee, and so did my wife. We're two of the unicorns because most people who live in Nashville from right now aren't from Nashville. So grew up in Nashville, Tennessee. Went to college to be a youth minister and pastor, and I spent about 13 years doing that work, most of which during that time I was also selling. So I really was a very good salesperson, sold insurance, health and life insurance to small business owners during that time as a way to make ends meet. And then in 2006, so mid-2000, I decided I was really done with that and I didn't want to do it anymore. I wanted to really go make a difference in a way that I didn't think I was able to make a difference as a pastor. And so I went back to school, got a master's in education. I started teaching 8th grade American history in a public school system here locally and fell in love, man. I absolutely love teaching. That's my superpower. So I love it. I love doing it. And 4 years into that, the 2008, Great Recession, financial crisis kind of caught up with the education system. And my principal came to me and he said, "Hey, we need to sit down and talk." And he said, "I've got some bad news. I've got to cut 2 teaching positions in the building." And essentially the way it boiled down was I was the last guy hired in the building, didn't have tenure, first in, first out, even though I was the number 1 teacher in my subject matter in the county. Like I was a model teacher. People would come watch me teach and take notes. I was really good at it. I was going to go on to be administrator. And, but that's not how they made their decisions. It's not a meritocracy.
No, it is not.
So I found myself having to, make a big decision. And, ultimately I started a company, but my first decision, okay, I'll go get a teaching job somewhere else, but I didn't want to move and I would have had to move and I didn't want to move. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to figure it out. So, there's a lot more details to it. I'll be happy to get into all the details, but eventually I just made the decision to kind of go full bore into my company and in an industry I didn't know anything about, and it worked quite well.
Yes, it did. And we'll get into that. So So one of the reasons I did this podcast is because while there are other business-esque entrepreneur podcasts that are out there, one of the problems I always had with them is they would give these sort of grand sweeping statements with really no granularity as to exactly how things transpired and how they worked. And I always thought, well, this is great. I'm motivated, but you didn't give me any data, right? I need some, I'm pumped up. I feel good. Okay, great. Now what? I would always say, okay, well, how did you do that? Right. I'd listen to these podcasts and authors and content that's out there and always ask, that sounds more like a motivational poster. That doesn't sound like real life.
Yeah.
So I try to kind of poke holes in the motivational poster, right? I jokingly say this is the anti-motivational poster. We attack tropes here. So switching careers in a very meaningful way that you did, where you go from theoretically, and I say this with a bit of irony considering what happened to you, but theoretically one of the safest jobs someone can get, right? To the least safe job someone can get, being an entrepreneur, right? With safety being defined as like, I'm going to get paid. I'm going to get a paycheck tomorrow. I can keep the lights on, right? Like you went from one extreme to another. Let's talk about that for a second. Yeah, there's a little come to Jesus with that one, because you're like, man, is this going to work? Am I going to pay the rent? Like, how's this feel? What's the wife say at this point?
Well, I have found, and I'll answer about what my wife said specifically, but I have found that since I have gone on this journey, is that the most safety is in entrepreneurialism. It is a false safety to think I'm an employee and I'm getting a paycheck, because here's the deal. I went to work that morning at the school, no clue. Went home that day, crap, what am I going to do? Like, that's how quick that happened. As an entrepreneur, this is what I always tell people. If you're an entrepreneur, there's this invisible line that goes across your life, right? If you go below that line, you're out of business. But the only person that knows how close you are to that line at any given time is you. Mm-hmm. And so you do this. Oh gosh. But you always know it's coming and you can prepare for it. But as an employee, you have no idea.
That's right.
So the whole safety in a W-2 paycheck is bull, it's BS, because it doesn't exist. There is no safety in it. It is a false sense of security. The best life is that of an entrepreneur, because you are 100% in control of your destiny. You're in control of what happens. And if you take blame well, then you're going to do well. If you blame other people, don't try entrepreneurialism.
Yeah, that's very smart. Okay, so, but what did white women, I'm going to generalize here, probably get some heat for this, but women tend to be more focused on sort of safety and security and planning. Men tend to be a little bit more pro risk. And so we tend to, take bigger leaps. What did your better half have to say about this switch?
Well, so I remember the day. It was in April. And so my principal gave me a heads up, right? I was going to get paid through August. So the end of school was the end of May. So he let me know in the middle of April. So that day, I remember leaving the school building, and I drove over to my wife's office. She was working for an investment advisor at the time. And so I went into the front desk or her desk where she was working. And I said, well, I have some bad news. And she goes, what? And I told her, and of course, she had been having a bad day, and it just made it all that much worse. Now, honestly, I don't remember how the rest of that evening went, or the next day. I just know that it was a lot of emotional upheaval in the house. Not that we were scared is not the right terminology, because I think we were mature enough to know that from our faith perspective, like God's always taking care of us. He's going to continue to take care of us, even if we lose a house. I mean, there were all these possibilities that were negative, but I think there was a lot of emotional upheaval. We were certainly a little bit, pensive about what's going to happen next. And of course, the first step was go get another teaching job. And I tried, and they didn't exist. Like, teaching jobs just didn't exist at that time here locally in Tennessee. But so when I made the decision, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this business, and we're going to do it full time. It was kind of one of those deals where, okay, I'm going to set myself a cliff on August the 15th. That's the last day I get a paycheck. That's it. Like, beyond that, I don't have any more paychecks. So I'm going to use from now to then to make something happen. And if I can make it happen, we're good. If I can't, I'll go get a real job. I'll go work at Lowe's or Starbucks. Right. So so the way that ended up turning out is on August the 12th, 3 days before my deadline, I got a handshake and a verbal commitment on a deal that ended up being around $2.3 million all in.
Funny that you, hold on. We've got so much to unpack in here. Funny that you bring up Starbucks, because no offense to Starbucks, I love Starbucks. I go to Starbucks. They're the example that I use when times are tough and you're like freaking out, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Successful people double down on what they're doing, and people who don't achieve their dreams, and I always use the analogy, get the job at Starbucks.
Yep.
Right? Because they have good benefits, they're a good company, everything, like it's kind of the easy way out. Again, no offense to Starbucks, but it is a bit of the easy way out, right? It's always that kind of that backup plan, like, okay, well, at least I can get a paycheck. I also like what you said there about you kept trying to be a teacher for a while. Like you didn't just go, well, I guess I'm going to be an entrepreneur because the teaching thing didn't work out. That's not realistic, right? This is one of those moments where I would question that story and go, that seems odd. You stepped up to the plate. There was nothing there. There was no pitches being thrown. You're kind of lost. Like, oh, okay, maybe this is your faith. Maybe this is the universe speaking to you. Whatever you want to call it. That was not your option. That path was closed, for better or for worse. By setting your deadline and frankly not having a lot of other options, your motivation is really, really high. And you kind of put that out into the world and it comes across, and something happens as long as you can stick with it. I don't know what that intangible thing is, but man, I've just seen it over and over and over, both on this show as well as in my own life. I'll be very honest with you. I've been in those exact moments where I thought, I don't know how this is going to work out. I can only make it another month and a half, and then poof, it somehow happens.
Yep.
It's amazing. Okay. So tell me what it feels like to go from, oh crap, I'm days away from my deadline and running out of money, to getting that verbal, to getting that handshake, to getting that, like, wait a minute, is this it? Did I just sell something?
Well, I'm going to tell you, it was a very happy ride down the elevator. And tell you that. So I'll tell this story for those of you. Every entrepreneur is a salesperson, or otherwise you're probably not going to be an entrepreneur very long. But for those of us who are true salespeople, you'll appreciate this story. So here I am. I'm sitting in this boardroom. It was at a hospital, and our company, Energy Lighting Services, does LED retrofitting in large commercial buildings. The primary reason we do it is to increase cash flow for the customers, because we can reduce their expenses so much by putting in LEDs that it actually gives them money back, right? Yep. So I'm sitting in the boardroom, and we're at this huge boardroom table. It's probably 15, 20 feet long. I'm on this side of the end of the table. So the end of the table's here. I'm sitting here. Directly across from me is the VP of Facility Services. Next to him is the chief engineer. Next to him is the chief financial officer. And next to me was my business partner. And so we're sitting there at this table, and I'm going through my slide deck on my 11-inch white MacBook, like those, remember those little bitty ones?
Yeah, right.
About the size of this, right? I mean, I don't have a clicker, and I'm not connected to the screen. I'm leaning across the table and hitting the space bar, and I'm going through, and the guy across from me, the VP, he interrupts me about 2/3 of the way through the presentation. He says, "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." He says, "Has anybody ever told you no?" And I said, "No, they haven't." Now, I didn't tell him. He was the first person I've asked.
Right.
He said, "Has anybody ever told you no?" And I said, "No." And then he kind of looks at me again, and he asks a deeper question. He says, "Why wouldn't I do this?"
Yeah.
I looked back at him and I said, "I don't know. Why wouldn't you?" And then he looks down the table at his side of the table, right? He looks at his engineer, looks at his CFO, and he looks back at me, and then he looks at him, the CFO, and says, "Write the man a check." That's how that first sales pitch went. Now, it isn't fair for those of you who are thinking, "Oh crap, all I got to do is land a $2.3 million contract and I'm golden." It's not fair to make you think that that's how that went, although that's the Cliff Note version of the story.
Right.
That day, we didn't get a check for weeks. Like we got a verbal, and he didn't really send a check because they had to go through their processes. Yep. And the first check we got was like $18,000, which granted was like half of my annual income as a teacher at the time. But we got an $18,000 check. And then later, our first big check was over $600,000. And then we did 2 or 3 2 or 3 projects, like phases of projects, which ended up totaling a little over $2 million in the next year or so. That was a phenomenal story. But I'm telling you, you mentioned, Pierre, motivation, and motivation is part of where we're at as entrepreneurs. You've got to have the proper motivation. Now, my motivation was money, in the sense that I had a mortgage to pay, had kids in private school, I had things I had to pay for, right? Things to take care of. But it wasn't money motivation in the sense of greed or the desire for accumulation of wealth. It was money motivation in the sense that I've got to make ends meet. I've got to do this. And so that came across in the sense of honesty and transparency. And it also it provoked me to do the right thing, right? I wasn't just out there pitching a plan of something I didn't know that I could handle. I did the research. I prepared. I put together a plan. I was in the right place at the right time. I knew the right people. I had a passion. And those things all melded together to create the success. And that's what I believe every entrepreneur's success is related to the 5 things I just alluded to. Everybody, it all comes to those things.
Fully agree, and I appreciate you throwing in a little luck and a little network in there, because those are contributing factors.
Absolutely.
And there have been great businesses, great business ideas, and business people throughout time that had the smarts, had the right idea, had the right business, but either they lacked something in their network, their timing was a little too early or too late, whatever it might be, and ultimately it failed. So there's kind of like a cocktail, if you will, that you need the right ratio of sort of all of those things to work to really get your business, whatever that might be, off the ground. Did you have a background or an understanding in this particular industry? Like, how did you go from being a history teacher to a ninja master at LEDs? I don't understand that.
So absolutely not. And I think that's what makes this story should be an inspiring story for anybody in any industry, because you don't have to be the expert in the industry to make it happen. So I'll give you a little bit more of the details. So 1 year prior to my principal coming to me and telling me I wasn't going to have my contract renewed for the following school year, 1 year before then is when I actually started the company. So a friend of mine had come to me and he said, "Hey, I've got this weird invention idea for a hydrogen generator, and it's going to be this next big thing. I need a partner. Will you help me?" And I'm like, "Dude, I love teaching. I'm not going anywhere. I'm doing this." And he convinced me. He said, "Hey, we should do this." So I was the business mind and the sales guy, but I never intended to leave teaching. And so we worked on this little invention thing for a year. And it was fun and it was interesting. And I kind of learned a little bit about how business operates, but not really. Like, I was not a science teacher, and this was a complete huge science project. So then, fast forward to when my principal had that conversation with me, I'm thinking, okay, I've got this company set up under the concept of energy. The LLC is Future Vision Energy. That was the name of the company, LLC. And I thought, okay, I've got this energy company, and what could I sell? Because I know how to sell that'll actually make money. Because I knew that the hydrogen thing wasn't going to work. And I thought, okay, what could I do? So I just did research. So I got online. I mean, I was looking on Craigslist. I went everywhere looking for what could I sell to make this happen. And honestly, somehow LEDs came across the desk, and I thought, hey, that's energy. That's an energy saving thing. I think I could sell that under the concept of Future Vision Energy and blah, blah, blah. And that's what I decided to do. So I took a crash course, self-directed crash course in LED lighting. I started calling manufacturers all over the world, mostly here in the country. I would fly out to see them, sit down and understand what they do. And I, hustled and made people believe in me and what we were trying to build here. And we made it happen. And I remember one of the first times I was asked a technical question by one of my customers. Now, my customer is always the CFO, the VP, the engineers, the top higher end. But when we kind of moved down one level to the guy that actually was involved in the project on their end, I remember one time they asked me about voltage. And many of you probably don't know anything about voltage, but common voltage is 110 to 277, which is what lighting typically operates on. And I remember that one of the maintenance guys said, so these lights are going to work on 277 and 110. And I looked at him and I had no idea what he was talking about. Like zero. I have zero understanding.
It was Latin to you, right?
And I went, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's going to work. And I I didn't want to lie, but also
Right.
didn't want to reveal that I was a
A
dummy.
novice. Right. Yeah.
So I remember that interchange, and for whatever I did, whatever I was able to say, it calmed him down. He was good with it. And then I went back later and called my manufacturer, like, what does this mean? He goes, yeah, we're good. We're good. So yeah, you don't have to know everything. Like,
Yep.
you've got to be prepared. I mean, I'm not going to go into cryogenics tomorrow because I don't understand it. But I mean, as long as you kind of understand the basics, you can make it happen. And I know that, there are a lot of people out there that are the so-called gurus of entrepreneurialism and the self-proclaimed ideologues of everything that goes on. And one of them,
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to name my name, talks about, the fake it till you make it, it's such a bull, but BS. Let me tell you, that is how you do it. You fake it till you make it. You don't lie.
Yep.
You don't do anything without integrity. You
Right.
don't ever mislead anybody, but you have to fake it until you make it. You've got to make it. You've got to make yourself seem like, hey, I know what I'm doing, even when you don't.
Right.
Not by lying, not by doing anything underhanded, not by cheating, but by pushing through. Because let me tell you something, Bill Gates, all the number one dudes in their industry today at one point faked it until they made it. They didn't know everything.
That's
Now,
correct.
there are people who lie. There are people who are
Yes.
lack integrity. That I have no time for.
In particular, and this is something my audience, I think actually finds me for is because one of the things that we do is really poke holes in self-proclaimed business guru folks, right? Who kind of stand on the top of their soapbox and say, hey, this is how business is done. Listen to me, I can show you the way. That's not really how business works at all, right? There are things that you can do as a person. There are smart things to do within your business, but how to be successful in your business, your specific business in this moment, there's really no one who knows that. Now, there's things that you can do to put yourself in a better position, right? Wake up early, work hard, be prepared, right? There's lots of things that you can do to give yourself the best chance. But that's like saying, hey, listen to me and I can get you to bat 1,000. Like that's impossible. It can't be done, right? Things are going to happen. So I'm often a fan of pointing out when certain online business gurus effectively say a bunch of platitudes and tropes that don't really mean anything. All right. So as a former sales guy, I used to sell asset management services to very large companies. So Merrill Lynch, UBS, CalPERS, Boeing, Google, et cetera. Those are my clients. And we manage money for their pension system and their 401ks, et cetera. So selling a lot, right? I have to ask the question, how'd you get the meeting? How'd you get that big meeting? Because that is not an easy thing to do.
So I mentioned there are 5 keys, I think, that are indisputable keys to success. And one of those is what I refer to as proximity. And I refer to that as proximity being, or position, being right place, right time.
Yep.
And the other one is people. It's knowing the right people. And I think that, so I'll give you the direct answer in just a moment, but I do believe that part of the keys to our success as entrepreneurs is being in the right place at the right time and knowing the right people. So if you go back and study entrepreneurs, you'll find that the very successful entrepreneurs with 9, 10 zeros behind their name, those guys didn't do it alone. They had somebody in their corner that was really critical in the connections that could make their success happen.
Yes.
And also right place, right time. So for instance, you could take the 2 right people to know each other to get something done, but be in the wrong place, wrong time, and it won't happen. So those things have to intersect. So for me, I was right place, right time, because if you look at the timing and the history of LED lighting as a commercially viable lighting source, 2010, 2011, 2012 was really the up and coming time for LEDs, really right at the edge. I mean, we had to explain to people what LEDs were, how they worked. We don't have to do that anymore, but that was right place, right time. But the other thing is knowing the right people. So at the time, my business partner actually knew the CFO of that hospital. And so he just called the guy up and said, hey man, can we get together and have lunch? We just want to talk. And now they knew each other and he didn't even know why we wanted to talk. And so when we got there, my business partner was like, all right, tell him. So I said, okay, here's the deal. Here's the deal, here's what we can do. We can get these LED lighting and so that's how it started. It started at a little restaurant in Middle Tennessee, just in the middle of nowhere. And like we explained it to him and he's like, are you serious? Like I can save this much money? Absolutely. And of course, then it took the next 2 or 3 months of working through the details and putting together the plan and counting all the
Right.
light bulbs and getting all that done. But that's how we got the meeting.
So I honestly mean this. Thank you so much for being so candid with a critical part in your story, because there is so much illusion out there. There's so much sort of fakery out there. And there's, again, there's a lot of that, just grind 24/7 and you can do it. Absolutely. Work ethic really can make a huge difference. But a piece like that, there are very few entrepreneurs. You are in rarefied air that are honest and say, hey man, it was this, I knew this person, the timing was right, and it all convened, and I was super prepared, and I had the right skill set, and it all came together, and that's how it went. Honestly, the only other person that I know that's really honest about that moment is actually the New York Times bestselling author, Tim Ferriss. And if you dig a little bit, he talks about how he had written his first book, The 4-Hour Workweek, which of course went on to be massively famous. And how did he have his breakthrough? He went to the electronics show in Vegas every year, right? The big one. And couldn't get in, didn't have a press pass, didn't have anything. But there was a press booth where you could just go hang out, get free Wi-Fi and bad coffee, right? And he's like, well, I'll just hang out here. And then like when the journalists and stuff come in, I'll just like build some relationships and talk to them. And that's how I'll meet people, because I can't actually get into CES. I'll just sort of effectively sit in the waiting room, right? And he makes nice with the gal checking people in. And so he's there day after day, because CES goes for a few days. And the biggest journalist in the techie kind of space eventually shows up, and he is mobbed by all these other people and industry folks, whatever. And Tim Ferriss is sitting there like, man, I got to go meet that guy. But how do I meet that guy? He's so important. There's all these people swarming around him. I'm never going to get in there. And he goes up to the receptionist who he's been talking to and built a friendship over the last 2 days with. Man, I would love to talk to him. And she goes, oh, that's my husband. Hold on one second. Flags him over and goes, this is Tim. He's been so nice and hanging out. And boom, he now had his undivided attention. And Tim Ferriss, to his credit, is very honest of, hey man, he wrote about me and my book sales went from basically 0 to vertical based on that being nice, unbeknownst to me, to that guy's husband. He had no idea who she was. He was just being nice. And so I love that. That is such a perfect story, just like yours is a perfect story of, I was prepared. I had this thing. I had some knowledge. I didn't know all the answers. I had a business partner. We kind of connected all those pieces, and that's what turned it. So so once the reality set in that, okay, you're in business, you got a real customer. Yes, there's some payroll, things in there. The check takes forever. Big companies move slowly, all that stuff. Your focus and an excitement. I mean, there must have been a moment when you were like, oh my gosh, this is real. This is really happening.
Yep. Well, I think that just like with anything else, it builds. There's this peak of excitement, and then you kind of come back down to some semblance of reality, just kind of understanding where things are, and then it kind of builds back up to the crescendo where things really happen. And I think getting a $686,000 check in the mail made out to your company's name is one of those days, and I still got a copy of that check. But that was when it was really like, okay, this is real. Now we still had to execute. I remember my at the time, my business partner, he and I were talking about this over, a celebratory drink and cigar. We're thinking, hey, we've sold it. Now all we got to do is execute. So now it's like, we got to get this stuff ordered. We got to make it happen. And the funny part of that story is that when the lights were delivered, I had been told, or had been intimated to me, that they would drop the trailer in the parking lot, and I would use that as my working station to pull inventory out as we went through the process. And the guy that dropped the trailer was like, "No, man, I'll be back in 3 hours to pick this thing up." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" Like we had no employees; it was just me. Like I was the only guy there, and I convinced the guy to come back the next day. I said, "Give me a day, I'll figure this out." So but then he didn't leave it convenient to the building. He parked it out in the back 40 somewhere. So I had to call another guy to get a tractor to pull the trailer over to where we were. And then I went to like the local labor source, got 3 or 4 laborers, and me and the 4 of them worked together to unload that thing, because you don't know what you don't know, but you got to be prepared to roll with it and do whatever it takes to make it happen. And I unloaded 17,000 LEDs that day with some help.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Okay, so let's skip forward a little bit. You get the install done. I'm sure that has its own trials and tribulations. You get its install done. Now what, right? Your pipeline for sales is effectively empty. What's sale number 2?
Yeah, so that was a thing. So at the time it was me and a business partner, and the business partner was not active. Like he made that first initial connection. He was a good advisor, but he wasn't active. He wasn't out selling. He didn't come to meetings with me. Certainly didn't get involved in the project management and unloading the truck. So I was essentially a one-man show, with no disrespect to him and his involvement, but I was essentially a one-man show at the time. So you're right. And only an entrepreneur would see that, right? It's like, okay, you won the big one, but you're going to take the next 6 weeks cleaning that fish and you ain't fishing. Right. So that's what happened. So I spent 90 days managing that. As a matter of fact, it was just far enough away from home. It's about an hour and a half drive from my house that I said to my wife, when the project started, I was going to manage the project. I drove down there, took my motorcycle and a trailer, checked into a hotel, and I stayed there for a couple of weeks just to make sure every day, and I didn't have to drive that 3 hours round trip to make it happen. So you got to do those things. You got to be prepared. But you're right. I didn't have the next thing teed up. But when there's only 2 people to pay, and you've got that large of a deal coming in, we were okay. Like we didn't buy a yacht and I didn't get a Ferrari, but we were able to pay the bills. We were able to make things happen. And then the next deal, and then the next deal, and the next deal. And it started rolling. And of course, it was still about 3 years before we hired our first employee. I hired an assistant, and then I hired a salesperson, then I hired an operations person, and we grew and grew and grew over the years.
That's really critical. That's very critical. And for all those listeners, just one more time, he didn't hire his next employee for a very long time, which means he is operator, owner, installer, sales guy, janitor, right? You're all of those things. There's so many people out there who think that they shouldn't have to do those things, right? That some of that work is beneath them. And it's known here in my office, we're in my office now, that if I catch anybody saying that's not my job, we have a serious conversation really, really fast.
Amen.
There's no such thing as that's not my job. That does not exist. I take out the trash just like I expect anybody else to take out the trash in my company. That's how it works, right? There is something that keeps you very grounded when you have that. And it also gives you a huge knowledge base, right? For you to be able to be good at what you do and then ask employees to do those things. How the heck are you going to tell them what to do if you've never done it, have no idea what it entails, right? So it's just an important part of building your business anyway. Okay, so let's fast forward another couple of years. So now it's 5 years past your big deal. The company's rolling. You've got multiple employees under your belt. You're doing multiple deals a year. You're really growing. What do you think sets you apart from a business? I don't mean sort of competitor to competitor, but in a business in Tennessee, for you to be identified and get so many awards that you did, right? That's not just, oh, you're good in the lighting space. You're competing, quote unquote, I kind of use air quotes here, against all businesses. For you to get noticed at that level is a big deal. What sets you apart there?
I think that it's our people and it's our commitment to the culture. You know, we decided a long time ago, as I started bringing employees on, you know, we did make some bad hires at times and we had to eliminate those people that didn't fit. But where they didn't fit was never a skill issue, although skills vary. But it was always a cultural fit. So when several years ago, I guess it's 3 or 4 years ago, I put together this thing for our company called the Pillars of Excellence. And there's 5 pillars of excellence. And what I told them was like, hey, if we're going to build a bridge from where we are now to the future where we want to be, like we want to be an X $1 million company, whatever that X is, you know, that's where we're heading. We've got to build it. And the pillars that hold that bridge up all have to be excellent. They can't be half-assed. They've got to be 100%. And I used the story as an illustration about the bridge. I think it was in Minneapolis back, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago, that collapsed. It was a major freeway collapsed in the river. I don't remember what highway it was, but when they went back and did the investigation, they found that one of the pillars just wasn't built right. Like it was just not, it was not. And so what I use as an illustration is like, look, we have 5 pillars of excellence as a company, the first of which is culture. And if we don't build each one of these pillars correctly, any part of that bridge can collapse and we'll never get to where we're going. So culture was the number one thing. And it starts with treating other people the way you want to be treated. It's accepting responsibility for your mistakes. And it's never saying that's not my job. We always make sure, just like you do, Pierre, is make sure that everybody in the company understands it's their job to get the stuff done, whatever the stuff is. Now, at some point, everybody gets to a place where they've earned their way out of the spot where they don't have to do something anymore. And as an entrepreneur and an owner, that's part of the benefit of owning the company. At some point, I don't have to come to the office every day, but I've earned that. I took all the risk. I made all the decisions.
That's right.
But before then, like I got to come in every day. I got to be there every day. I got to do everything. And so all the employees kind of understand that. And I, with rare exception, because not everybody's perfect, but with rare exceptions, the people that we have working for us are absolutely golden. So how do we win those awards? It's because of our people. It's because they put themselves in a position that says, we're going to do whatever it takes to get the job done. We're committed to world-class customer experience because we know that if we deliver that world-class customer experience, people are going to come back. They're going to remember us. Yep. And if we can do that, we're going to be recognized. And we did. We got recognized, as you've alluded to, Inc. 5000 2 times as one of the fastest growing privately held companies in the country. Entrepreneur 360 list is one of the best entrepreneurial companies in the country. Multiple Small Business of the Year award nominations here in Nashville. And these things happen. Yes, I'm an entrepreneur. Yes, I started the company. Yes, I'm leading it, but I couldn't have done it by myself. There's no way. Nobody gives that award just to me, because any kind of Small Business of the Year award doesn't go just to the guy who owns the company. It goes to the people who make it happen. And I've got great people, and my people are fantastic. My executive leadership team, more than anything else, I kind of give them credit because they're killing it. And especially this year, going through all the crap that we've been through in this 2020, man, they have performed amazingly. And I would not be surprised to see where we go next.
All right. So this is the part in the show where we're supposed to start building your business back up, which we effectively just did. But I need your advice, me personally. So we're going to get real candid here. So I'm going to use this opportunity to pull some free advice out of you. Okay, so we are right now, you talked about culture, and I couldn't agree more. And I'm struggling with something right now because we're making a hire. We're making a significant hire to the team. It's a project manager role. It's one of the most important roles that we have here at the company. And I want to find a person that has a unique set of talent in that they speak some engineering, but they also are very likable and affable and highly organized and efficient, right? Which is a tough combination to kind of get both. Okay. But what I care more about than the skill is that they're culturally going to fit within our team. And we have a really tight-knit team that just does amazing work. Why am I concerned about that? Because I believe that we all speak freely here in the office. We're all very comfortable with each other. So what does that mean? We swear sometimes. We say Merry Christmas at Merry Christmas time because we're not worried about offending anybody, even though not everyone here celebrates Christmas, right? We might say a joke from time to time, actually a lot. We joke around a lot. Men, women, everybody. And everybody is great with it because we're all on the same page. We know we're not hurting anybody's feelings. And I'm so sensitive to bringing somebody else in that may be offended or hurt or uncomfortable in that type of culture. And here's my thought process. And I want you to tell me if I'm wrong or how to go about hiring this person. Because if I'm so worried about offending somebody on my team that I have to filter subconsciously or consciously all the words that I say and I choose to use, I have already put myself under this self-imposed filter that now when we're trying to be creative, and I argue that building a business is one of the most creative things anyone has to do. If I'm already kind of held back or censored because of my language, it's going to be even more difficult, or I should say less likely I will be comfortable being creative, because when you are creative, whether you're painting, building a business, cooking, you name it, Most of what you put out is garbage. Only a little bit of it is gold, but you need to go through the garbage to get to the good stuff, right? I don't care if you're crafting jokes or crafting a cocktail. It's just how the world works, right? So if I'm already all buttoned up because this, I don't know, I don't want to upset this person. I feel that impinges creativity a lot. Now, here's the problem. This is where I need your advice. That sounds probably pretty obvious to most of our listeners. What question or questions do I ask this potential interviewee? Hey, are you going to get along with our culture? Because remember, this is a high-paying job. They're highly incentivized to, frankly, lie to me and tell me whatever I want to hear so that they get the job, right? Yeah. So I don't know what to do, Jason. You got to tell me what to do, man. I'm struggling here.
All right. So what I have, I believe, is a very huge key to getting you where you want to be. It is not the only answer, but I do have a good one. So first of all, I've got a list that I've compiled over the years of 72 interview questions. Now, don't ask them all, but hear me out. But I have 72 interview questions that I've compiled from other entrepreneurs just like me. And we sit around, what do you ask your new hires? What do you ask your candidates? And I collected it and I compiled 72. When I got to 72, I quit. It's like, that's too many. All right. Yeah. So I got 72. Now, what I do in an interview process is one of my VPs, they do the technical interview. They do all of the checking your references, doing your resume, all that crap. I'm not interested in that because that's their job to check that, not mine. My job as CEO is to check culture, just like what you're talking about. When I sit down with them, I do interview by numbers and I tell them, I say, I got 72 questions here. Some of these questions are like, what did you eat for breakfast and why? Some of these questions are like, why do you want to work here? What's your goals for life? Like, what's your favorite color? It could be any question about anything. There's 72. You get to decide which questions I ask. Pick a number between 172. Whatever question and number they pick, I write down on a piece of paper, they pick number 32, and then I write the answer to that question. 32 might be really ridiculous, like tell me your first pet and what were they like? It could be tell me your number one goal in life, or it could be anything. It's a myriad of questions. So what that does is it takes, like, I don't have to pick the question and I still get a good flavor of how they think because they're going to they got to think on their feet.
Right.
So that's one way. Now, the other way is I have 3 questions I ask every single time. And these are the 3 questions. Number 1, I ask this question: what do you want? And I don't clarify it. And whatever they say, I dig. Why do you want that? Why do you want that? What do you want? And they could answer it, well, I want a $100,000 salary, or I want an $8 million house on the beach, whatever. I don't care how they answer it, but it gets to inner motivation. Like, what is motivating this person? So that helps me understand. So the what do you want question. The second of the 3 questions I ask every single time is, tell me about a time when somebody told you you were wrong and you weren't. How did you handle that? And then I ask a very similar question. Like question number 3 is, tell me about a time when somebody told you you were wrong and you were wrong. Like, how did you handle that? Now, the times that I've asked those 2 questions and they can't come up with anything, I hired one person and it was a huge mistake. And like within 3 days, I had to fire him. Like, it was so bad. Like, because if you can't think of a thing that you've ever done wrong, you're not being honest, and that person won't fit. So so the 72 questions and interview by number helps culturally because you see how they think. Those 3 questions help a lot because it tells you who they are. And then the third and final piece of all of this that we do is at kind of one of the final steps in our interview process is we do a culture fit interview, and it's a group interview. We bring in as many people from our team as possible. And our team's not very big, 15 people. But so we may have 7, 8, 9, 10 people in the conference room with the candidate. And every person in the room has already been prepped. They can ask one question. They only get one and they come up with it. They can come up with any question they want. Doesn't matter what it's related to, as long as it's an appropriate question. And we just go around the room and you see how that person interacts with the people they just met for the first time. I've had people ask questions like, where did you go on your last vacation? I've had people ask, is a hot dog a sandwich? Like, just crazy questions. But what it does is it really gives you a sense of how's this candidate going to interact with someone they don't really know, but they're going to be forced to interact with. So how are they going to act? So if somebody comes out of that interview and they melded well with everybody in the room, we feel really good. If we come out and they went, ooh, that was a little odd. They could have been the number one best person ever in their field. We don't hire them because we know that's going to be a bad thing. So those are the ways we help kind of filter out culture fit in the beginning.
Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm gonna steal some of that. I'm very much struggling with this, as you can probably tell. So put a lot of thought into it. Ask my elders, my oldest family members over the weekend who have done this, long successful career. Trying to pulled in some of the team into my office this morning. Like, man, what are we gonna do? We want to keep what we have here. I just want to add to it. I don't want to be coming in and screwing things up. We're kicking butt this way. So, that is tremendous. Okay. Back to you for a second. So thank you for letting me pick your brain. So tell me a little bit more about your next steps, right? You really are now hitting your stride from an entrepreneurship standpoint, right? You're on a very strong growth path. It's now giving you the freedom, yes, of income, but that's more secondarily. Sort of primary is giving you the freedom of time, the freedom of headspace, the freedom of a little less anxiety on making the rent every month, right? So what are you doing now? I know that teaching is your superpower. Tell me a little bit about the teaching and coaching that you've been doing.
So I think that for entrepreneurs, we've heard for a long, long time the cliche, and it's true, but it's still a cliche about you got to learn to work, in your business or on your business, not in your business. We've heard that, and we kind of understand what that means. You got to make sure everything's going, but you're not actually being the technician. I think that comes from an E-Myth, about how there's technicians and then there's entrepreneurs, and we got to make sure that we make the transition sooner than later. It took me 9, almost 10 years to make that switch. Well, that's not really fair. 8 or 9 years to make that switch. And there are lots of reasons for that we don't have time to get into, but I'd be happy to talk to anybody about it. But I think that you should plan for that switch early, and you should hire a business coach day one, and day one you should also hire a bookkeeper. That's my 2 technical nuts and bolts advice for all entrepreneurs: business coach and a bookkeeper day one, and the bookkeeper can't be anybody related to you. That's the rule. So you got to make sure you get those things in place, because if you don't plan to one day be able to step out of the business, all you're doing is building a job. And I don't like there are some entrepreneurs that are fine to just have a professional job the rest of their lives, and there's nothing wrong with that. It ain't the choice that I'm making. But it took me 8 or 9 years to kind of wake up and go, holy crap, I built this thing and I haven't set myself up for this position where I'm the investor owner, not the operator owner. Mm-hmm. And so over the last couple of years, I've really kind of put the pedal to the metal to get there as fast as possible. I've always enjoyed coaching entrepreneurs, and I've done this for years. I've coached anybody who would take advice from me. I'd sit down and I'd even do it, for free. I wouldn't even charge. I'd say, look, let's get together every month and we'll talk about your business. We'll build systems and processes. So I'm doing that now more formally under the brand Results Through Integrity, which is my coaching brand, Results Through Integrity. So I'm coaching people. I put out video content every week. I'm starting a new video series next week. So I do this video content to get this out there, and I'm also coaching entrepreneurs. And what's interesting is that in 2020, January 1 of 2020, I pulled my executive leadership team in and I had a conversation with them. I said, guys, this is the year where I'm going to make on purpose, I'm going to transition away from being here every single day. And you guys are running. I want you to act like owners. I want you to take the role. And they got it. They were they're good with it. And it wasn't like, hey, well, by February 1st, you're never going to see me again. That wasn't the issue. But guess what happened in March? COVID hit and the world went to crap. So here's what ended up happening, man. Those 4 people in my executive leadership team stepped up huge, absolutely huge, and took it and ran with it, and they're doing great. So coming out of COVID, or the effects of COVID for where we are, it's not nearly that bad, but where we came out of it, man, they are killing it. They're absolutely killing it. So for me, what I was able to do last month, or actually we're in June. So this month versus this month, I was able to sit down with my entire company and say, look, I told these 4 guys at the beginning of the year that they were going to kind of take over, running everything eventually. but COVID's kind of sped that up. So you're not going to see me around much anymore. I'm still here. I still own the company. I'm still the CEO. I'm still running. I'm still financially responsible for the company. I'm still the guarantor on all the loans. Like I'm still the guy.
Right.
But these four are going to take it. So what I'm doing now is I'm spending more of my time, most of my time actually, coaching, and I'm coaching business owners. I'm coaching entrepreneurs. I'm working on a book. I'm putting out content because I think that my superpower as a teacher, like that's what I want to do. My mission in life is to use my gifts of teaching and leadership to help other people get the results they want in life. And one of my goals, overarching goals, you already kind of mentioned it, Pierre, is that I want to have complete freedom over my time, my energy, and my money. Money has been great at being an entrepreneur. It's had its ups and downs, just like all of us do.
Of course.
But that's not it. Like time is important. Energy is important. And I want to be respected by my friends and my business colleagues and my family members. And I want to always operate with integrity, treating other people the way that I want to be treated. So as long as I'm able to do those things, we're great. So right now I'm doing more coaching than I am running my company, but my company is running great. They're doing, as a matter of fact, we had a board meeting this morning. I went in for my monthly board meeting. We sat down, kind of went through all the things, and everything's going great. They're doing fantastic. And I come in and help when I can, but long term, this is what God made me for. This is what I want to do. And I want to help other people build businesses to get where they want to be. And I believe that you start with the end in mind. And that's not what I did. I believe that you should start with, okay, this is what I want to happen. All right. So what has to happen immediately prior to that? What has to happen immediately prior to that? And you work yourself backwards. And then that's where you start and you push forward. And that's the curriculum that I've built for my coaching platform. I've got a 3-year curriculum to go from startup to success in 3 years or less. And I start with, what do you want at the end? Like in 3 years, what do you want this to look like? And then we just back it up and I build a system. And then I've got an advanced curriculum for the next 3 years. And then I've got an exit strategy curriculum for the last 3 to 4 years on that year 10. So that by 10 years from now, dude, you should be able to check out with lots of zeros and be able to do whatever you want to do.
So the point that you made about, hey, setting a goal, that's great. But then reverse engineering milestones, I call them mile markers, right? Like you're driving down the highway and you're trying to get to New York City and it's 100 miles out. Okay, my goal is to get to New York, and now I've passed mile 1, mile 2, etc. Reverse engineering it, starting with where you want to end and then backing it up into steps. That is by far the smartest way to go about it. It's exactly what we've done here. I strongly endorse that methodology because it is effective. I've seen it work. It's worked for myself. However, while as obvious as that little tidbit sounds, here's the sad truth. Most people don't do it, right? They just go, I'm here. I haven't even taken off of first base yet. I'm not even on first base. I want to be a grand slam. And there's nothing in between, right? That's how most people sort of go through life, whether it's personal relationships or their business. Doesn't really matter. The success, one of the myths that's out there, let's back up for 1 second. One of the myths that's out there is that people who have money are miserable. That is a lie that poor people tell themselves to make themselves feel better. Some of the wealthiest people that I know have the happiest marriages with the most grounded, perfect children. Why? Because they built a system of responsibility and integrity and honesty. And that's how they were successful in business. That's how they were successful with their wife. That's how they're successful father, et cetera, right? It's all the same thing. And by the way, all of those guys are fit, right? It's an interesting thing because that discipline applies across the board. It applies to all facets in life. So what Jason's talking about, guys, is being successful at life. Yes, if you're successful in business, you can make a lot of money. We all know that. That's great. And money can help as a support system, all those things, but it's not everything. But the systems we're talking about here will make you a better father, a better husband, a better mother, a better daughter, etc. You can be better at all of those things. It's really the same tool set. It's not wildly different. It's actually the exact same thing. Anyway, I had to digress there because I think there's such a disconnect.
It is. It's right. And I think most people treat entrepreneurialism like a GPS. They put it on their phone, they open up Waze or Google Maps and say, this is the destination, go. Right. They start driving. They're waiting for it to say, well, which way to turn? All right,
that's exactly right.
Entrepreneurialism doesn't have a GPS unit. No. You have to map this sucker out on your own.
Yes.
And if you want to end up all the way over here, then you got to go backwards and go, okay, where do I have to turn last to get there? And then you just back it on up. I was working with a business owner recently. He's had his business for about 9 years and it's done reasonably well. But he's kind of got, complacent in the business. He's kind of a solopreneur, been successful as a solopreneur, but is ready to take it to the next level. And so what I did is the first thing we did is I sat down and said, okay, we're going to go through your sales process today. And so I said, tell me about your sales process. And he started, all right, step 1, we do this, step 2, which is normal. And there's nothing wrong with that answer. I said, okay, we're going to do this different. Like, what's the last thing to happen before you've deposited a check? Mm-hmm. Okay. And he had to think like, okay, this has to happen. Okay. Now, in order for that to happen, what has to happen right before that? And he got to think okay. And then we wrote that down and we reverse engineered that dude 9 steps.
Yep.
Okay. So now we know where we've got to go. So in order to get to the step 9, step 1 has to look like this.
Yes.
And it's a completely different way of thinking about it. And if you want to be successful, that's the way you have to build it. There is no GPS shortcut. There is no Waze. There is no Google Maps. You have to build it that way if you're going to be successful as an entrepreneur.
Again, that's so accurate. So we actually did that exact program here. So with our first handful of clients, it was really a kind of a stumbling process of exploratory conversations and calls with our prospects that eventually turned into clients. And as we gathered this information, we started writing it all down, and that kept our team on track. And so that shortened things up and got things a little bit more efficient, because now you had a list, an operating system, if you will, of what you needed to acquire information wise once a prospect said yes, and you were moving them towards that first check, as you mentioned. Well, then on a conference call, where we do a team call twice a week, it's Tuesdays and Thursdays. At the end of the day, everybody gets on and gives kind of a round robin in terms of what they've been up to. And the goal is to really get creative and people to know what each other are up to and how each other can help. And I said, hey, team leads, how comfortable would you be sharing that checklist that you use with our clients with the client and giving it to them up front and going, hey, this is the info that we need? They kind of looked at each other and went, yeah, that seems fine. Okay. So we gave it to the client and said, hey, now that you've said yes, here's the list of the information that we need. Can you gather this before our next call? Yeah, no problem. We just took our sales cycle from like 9 phone calls to like 3 phone calls and made the customer all that much happier just building that system, right? So exactly what Jason's talking about, reverse engineering that process can make you more efficient, make the customer happy, increase your business, et cetera. So we are running late on time. We've gone a little over our time today. So this has been huge. I feel like we could do this for another hour here, kind of getting into the weeds of how to build a successful business. Jason, tell the people where they can follow you and learn more about you.
All right. So thank you. This has been great. So you can follow me on, I'm really most active on LinkedIn and Instagram. And you can find me on either one of those platforms at The Real Jason Duncan, The Real Jason Duncan. I have a YouTube channel that you can go to youtube.com/C/Jason Duncan. And I've got hundreds of videos there that I produce. I do a Friday sales tip video every Friday called #Friday Sales Tip. And I do about 4 or 5 minutes on how to be more successful at sales. I do a video every Monday or Tuesday on my YouTube channel that is on the 7 habits of highly effective people, which has been phenomenally important to me as an individual. I don't care if it helps anybody else. I am digging it. It's like making me such a better person. And then I'm also going to start a new weekly Wisdom with Jason video series starting next Wednesday. All that's on YouTube and Instagram TV. I also put it out on all the other platforms. I have a Facebook page, RTI Coach, stands for Results Through Integrity. So any of those platforms, you can find me and follow me. But if LinkedIn, Instagram, those are probably the 2 social media platforms. And then please subscribe to my YouTube channel, because us YouTube people feel better when we have more subscribers.
We do. Yeah. Smash the like button, get that algorithm working in our favor. That's the move, man. That's how you make a happy day right there. Thank you so much for being here. Specifically, thank you for being candid, man. That's really, really critical. So thank you all of our listeners. Life is not a motivational poster. Thank you for joining. Till next time, everyone. Thank you, Jason. Bye-bye.